One of the pleasures of my job is to listen to an album and then get the person who made the album into the studio and talk to them. And I'm really happy that Rachael Kilgour is with me today. Hi, Rachael.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I love your new record. It's called My Father Loved Me, and it comes out very soon.
It actually is out.
It is out.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
I'm having an album release in Minneapolis that is much delayed. It actually came out in September.
That's right. Okay. Doing a whole album of songs about your father, I've heard of people doing a song about a parent or a loved one, but a whole album, there's something really deep about this that I want to talk to you about. I mean, there's a lot of facets of your father's life that you must have wanted to write about.
Yeah, for sure.
Tell me about your dad first.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it was a surprise to me, too, that I started writing about him. My dad, well, as the songs say, my dad was a real hard worker. He lived a pretty simple life. He really cared about doing his job well and being reliable, taking care of his family, not taking advantage of people. He put in a lot of hours that he didn't charge for, helped out a lot of people who lived alone and couldn't figure things out on their own. And I really admired that about him. But when I was young, that meant he wasn't home a lot. He was working a lot. So I spent a lot of time. We had, it was a one-income family. My mom was home with us. So she really set the tone in a lot of ways and was like more instrumental in my childhood, in the like forming of me as a child. So I did find it kind of surprising when my dad died how unsettling it was and how much I had, how many questions I had about who he was and what he meant to me and how much I was like him and what I could learn from him now that he was gone. And I just kind of couldn't, it came slowly, but I couldn't stop. Like, usually songs come to me where there's just a nagging idea or worldview that I'm trying to shift or make sense of. And so it would come one at a time. Little bits of him. He also had dementia for the last decade of his life, which, so that means that I was 35 or so when he died, and 34. And that means I didn't really get the chance, in your early 20s, you're like busy rejecting your parents. Like, oh, you guys are so annoying. Everything you do is dumb.
Right.
So by the time I was curious about him, he was gone. He was either not himself, and then he was physically gone. And the songs felt like a good way to get to know him.
It's an evil disease.
Yeah.
Was that the intent then when you got the idea to write a song or two and then an album? I mean, that was the whole idea of the...
Yeah, I think it has many facets. One, to get to know my dad. Another, to like celebrate my dad in that he had lived this very humble life, and I don't care so much about legacy, but like I feel like so many of us live lives like that, and who's to say that I get to go up on stage and people clap at me? But living well and loving the people you love is meaningful. That's a good life, and it's worthy of celebration. That is one angle, and then I also realize in the performance of the songs that there's something about proving something to myself and the ways that I am like my father, the ways I doubt myself, or the ways I carry around shame specifically. There's this kind of through line of the shame that kind of held my dad back, or that he worried he wasn't good enough, that he wasn't doing his job well enough, or that he let his family down, or whatever it was. I recognize that lives in me as well, and in the audience, and when I'm performing the songs, that it feels like my dad spent his whole life hiding these things, and instead I'm just going to tell you exactly what happened, and then I'm going to tell you that I loved him anyway.
I feel like I really got to know your dad by listening to this record, and it's a blessing. I mean, it sounds like a really cool guy.
Yeah.
You had this idea when you were recording another album, right? And you just said, I'm going to do a song about my dad, or an album about my dad.
Yeah, I had written Dad Worked Hard first, but it was the only song I wrote when my dad was alive, and I did not share it with him. But yeah, it was finished. When I was recording the last EP, I was in the studio, and the producer was like, I'd really like to record that one. And I said, I'd really like to not, because I'm going to write more songs about my dad.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah. Yeah. That was the intent all along.
Yeah. I think I don't usually make plans when it comes to art, but I just I had a feeling that there was a lot more there. He had suddenly become a very big character for me to figure out.
I'm in the studio with Rachael Kilgour. My Father Loved Me is the title of her new record. New as of last fall, I should say.
Yes.
And
it's still new.
It's a beautiful record. How does your mom like it?
Good question. My mom loves me. And
perfect.
I mean, we have different interests and different ways of listening to things. And one of her best skills as a mother is the ability to release us and support us. I don't ever feel like she's tried to control what I say or how I express myself. She's never put me down. Mm-hmm. She's also not as curious about the things that she's not necessarily thinking about language in the same way, or how my emotions were shaped. She's just oh, okay, well, I'm really proud of you. Good job. Your dad would have been proud. She says very nice things and gives me permission, I think, to just uncover whatever I uncover, however it comes out, which doesn't always look great for our family, but that's the thing about families.
One of the songs in the album, the song Ontario, is when there's this describing in a car accident. Mm-hmm. When was that? How old were you when that happened?
I was a teenager. I think it was 18.
Yeah.
And that was a big moment. I feel like I've learned more about the songs as I've been performing them, and that usually comes at the end of the show. And like I was describing, it's this memory of my dad trying to do everything right, but also kind of wondering about his sense of belonging in his own family, in the world, and worrying. I guess having a really hard time forgiving himself and apologizing also. Mm-hmm. These two things come in hand. And like I said earlier, we did have this. It was a pretty bad car accident, and all of us physically, we all survived. It was okay, and thank God. But our family was kind of forever changed by this big
guilt.
This sense of guilt. Mm-hmm. And this kind of, he didn't know how to really say, I'm really sorry, and I screwed up. And it felt like this kind of cloud that hung over everything. And so then I decided, well, we should just put this out in the open. I'll write a song about it.
You worked with one of my favorite songwriters who produced this record, Rose Cousins, on this. How did she affect the songs, any of the arrangements, order, all that stuff? How was her effect on the album?
She was, integral to all of those things. I think I came with the songs, other than I had one song I finished the last few bits in studio, but the songs themselves were kind of there. And I've known Rose for a long while and have always admired, her songwriting. And her voice, I mean, obviously her voice, but I mean, her voice is herself.
Yeah.
In all ways, and in how she represents herself in her own recordings. There's just something very steady about her. And we had a conversation recently about production and how easily swayed I can be, or and so it came, I had all these songs suddenly, and I thought, gosh, I really want to record these, and I want to do them well, and I want to maintain my own agency, but also be enhanced by someone else's creativity and comfort in the studio. And on top of all of it, I really want to make it in Canada because my dad was Canadian. And not only was he Canadian, I mean, he was an immigrant Canadian. So, I mean, he was living in the States and was very patriotic, and it would have made a really big impression on him that it was recorded there. So it seemed like a natural, I don't know. I just woke up one morning and I was like, I should obviously ask Rose to produce this. And I did. And she said yes. And the great thing about Rose is she's incredibly selective, but when she says that she wants to do something, she shows up 500%. And I think that the record really was enhanced by her both setting the scene. She's very good. She's very attentive to like, let's have an environment that's comfortable for you where you can do all this. She's a songwriter who can like listen so well. That doesn't usually happen. I feel like my experiences in the studio, I haven't had someone across the table being like, okay, I can instantly hear in this like succession of words that you've made that you're having this deep longing for your parents to love one another in order to prove that you're worthy of love. You know, like there's just like these kind of like complicated but very simple human ideas that are coming through in these songs that she paid attention to and affirmed, and then also I think, you know, amplified with the use of production and with the use of her friends. She brought in the studio and the engineer and all of the musicians who played on it. So it's like fully Canadian content, but also the very best Canadian content that only Rose would pick. She did the string arrangements. She did a lot of it. And I think I just was so happy that she was careful enough to hear a song, to be able to let it stand on its own if it needed to, or also like how to carve out like a sonic landscape that these things could live on and still like stand out.
Mm-hmm. One more question. I think about writing a song about your father after he passes away. It's got to help you deal with the grief, but this is so deep. This record is so deep. And I feel like it must have done more than that. I mean, it feels like I got to know your family really well by listening to this record, but how did anything change the way you think of your dad after you wrote these songs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, I think losing him made me change how I thought of him, but the losing, if you've done the losing, or if anyone has who's listening, I think it's just very disorienting. It doesn't really point you in a new direction. You're just blank, you know, like what is, you know, and I had to like kind of recreate my dad maybe through song and make him not into a saint, but into a human I could relate to and be proud of being related to, and to be, you know, fallible just like I am. So, yes.
I'm sure he's proud of this, too.
Aw, I do. Yeah, I often will say that from the stage. The best thing about a dead parent is, he gives me all the validation I need. He loves it.
Yeah. Rachael, thanks so much. This is Rachael Kilgour. The album is called My Father Loved Me, and thanks for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me.
The Current is public media made possible thanks to member support.